So with Mercury retrograde, this is now my fourth time trying to get this video done. So let's see if I'm successful. Normally when I express that it's my fourth or fifth time trying to get something done, I get the chance to get it done. This is not meant to be a long video, and because I've recorded 3 or 4 and deleted them, they're still sort of sitting in my cache. So let's see if I can get through it. Those of you who follow my channel know that I tend to do 2 or 3 videos or 4 videos in a row, and then I hit the snooze button. So it's time to stop hitting the snooze button, because on July the 4th, July the 5th, depending on where you are, we have the last of the 3 summer eclipses, this time a full moon lunar eclipse in the sign of Capricorn. But more interestingly, between June the 25th and June the 30th, we've had 4 or 5 astrological events that move us from the first half of 2020 to the second half of 2020 and set the stage for that. And we should all be instinctively feeling this in some way, shape, or form by now. If anything, feeling it as an energetic increase of sort of the desire to move forward and get things done, just an energetic increase in general, and yet at the same time, there's still being a little bit of confusion temporarily. But I'll break this down for you. The purpose of this video is sort of a broad compass video where we're at right now and what it is that we're going to be dealing with energetically in the second half of this year. Before I do videos on Mars in Aries, Saturn coming back into Capricorn, and then the full moon lunar eclipse in Capricorn. So this is a general overall video as we head to 2020. The second half of 2020. God, there's the other thing about Mercury retrograde, which is if I don't slow down and talk, it's like there's a disconnect between the way the brain is processing information and the way you end up communicating, whether you're writing or... Remember one thing, Mercury retrograde is not a time to be hasty, not a time to hit send on an email or a text or a voicemail without really thinking it through, or it will create confusion, blow up in people's faces, etc., etc. So, first things first, we're headed towards a full moon, and all the energetic things that involve being headed to a full moon apply, except that Mercury is also retrograde. So, things are trying to get completed. Your to-do list and the time in which to complete tasks, there may be a disconnect. Your to-do list may feel longer than how much time you have to get something done. Things are busier. The emotional cup is going to get full. People are going to have meltdowns. There's going to be confusion because they're going to have meltdowns and be trying to communicate while Mercury is in retrograde. Eclipses and full moons are not all bad. For certain people, it may push people into the limelight in some way, or help complete something, or make a project complete, or finish something up. At the same time, for other people, it can be that things lead to some sort of an emotional culmination, or a certain amount of confusion, or a certain amount of visibility that involves some sort of a meltdown or a certain amount of confusion. Okay, more than anything else, it's a pace increase over the next 4 or 5 days that we're going to be feeling. And this idea of energetic increase, with some of that energy at least knowing where to go, and some of that energy not knowing entirely where to go, is where we are at right now. So the 4 or 5 things that occurred over the past 5 days. First and foremost, Venus went direct in Gemini on June the 25th. I've done a separate video on Venus going direct in Gemini. I think that was my last video. Take a look at my video list and you'll find it. The bottom line is that relationship and financial evaluation in terms of our priorities, our goals, working on past creative opportunity, financial and relationship opportunity projects, all of that now we're ready to move forward with it. If we have been doing a certain amount of investigating or reevaluating, we may be eager to move forward with it from a sort of a yin investigative energy to a yang, I want to get out there now, I want to take care of some actions and some tasks and get certain things done kind of energy. So since we're but with Mercury retrograde, we still have a 2-week period of confusion and the details not entirely being clear and crossed wires, and not a time to dot the I or cross the T in certain respects, not the time to put pen to paper and sign on the dotted line or complete a contract. But sometimes some of this is unavoidable. So if you're going to, chances are during Mercury retrograde, the things that are going to blow up are going to have to do with details, with certain square objects trying to be fit into round holes and the resulting issues that they create. So things may take 3 times as long, or there may be convoluted discussions around things that were clear and we thought we were going in a certain way but now are no longer clear and have to be revised, all that kind of stuff. So the energy to complete and the energy to get things done is here. The clarity regarding us being in a place where we may be done or have had it, particularly when it comes to about certain relationship or financial issues, and now we want to put them in practices there. But we've got another 2 weeks of investigation to do. Okay, I'm going to build on that in a second. Next transit, Mars entered Aries on June the 28th. Mars typically transits a sign and therefore a house in about 45 days. I use whole signs for houses, so that's why I say a sign and therefore a house. So you're welcome to use whatever house system you want. I don't want to get into, people feel very passionately about their house systems, and that's not the intent of this video. Sorry for non-astrologers who are watching this. Got a little technical there. But Mars is going to spend 6 months in this sign, not 45 days, because it goes all the way down, slows down, goes retrograde from the middle of September to sometime in November, and then goes direct again, and then is out by early January. Mars rules Aries. Mars is happy in Aries. If we're feeling, especially since the end of June, since a few days ago, over the last week, I've been feeling a certain amount of energy returning. And if you feel even just getting things done and moving on things that you did not have the energy to do over the last 45 days or 2 months, if you're feeling like all of a sudden the dishes are getting cleaned and I'm putting this in place and I'm working on this and I'm getting this stuff and I have a new routine and things are ready, that's Mars in Aries. Okay? Let's go. Let's get things done. Let's meet those goals. Let's put the coin into the slot machine and hit, but except Mercury is retrograde. So we've got 2 more weeks before we are held back to some extent. Third transit, Jupiter conjuncted Pluto on the 29th. It still continues to be, and is going to conjunct, Jupiter is going to conjunct Pluto one last time in November. It still is a time of pandemic craziness and social unrest and revolution for the rest of the year. Sorry. And we have an election here in the US in October. And somewhere everything that's playing out, at least socially, has a direct correlation to that. The energy does not, anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Transit number 4, Mercury, a retrograde Mercury conjuncted the Sun in the sign of Cancer, where the eclipses are taking place right now. And that means that this happened yesterday on the 30th of June, and that means that it sets up a communication cycle in the sign of Cancer that lasts till about October 25th. So not only did we have an eclipse in the sign of Cancer, and for those of you who know your chart, what house does Cancer occupy? What are the themes in that house? These themes have been active for you to lean in and take care of some sort of challenge or avail of some sort of opportunity since July of 2018. And we had an eclipse this year on June the 21st. We're going to have another new moon on July the 20th. And then yesterday, Mercury retrograde conjuncted the Sun, which inaugurates a new communication cycle. And so communications, writing, speaking, etc., about everything that is in play right now continues till October the 25th. Remember, the eclipse itself, and these are timelines I've mentioned in the eclipse video that I did, the eclipse itself remains powerful and active till about August the 18th, till we get to the new moon in Leo. But, it's a solar eclipse. The corresponding lunar eclipse is in Gemini, not as powerful as if it had been in Capricorn, but that's on November the 30th, and October the 25th is an important date too. So this Cancer theme of dealing with Cancerian issues in the house, particularly where Cancer sits in your chart, remains active really for the rest of the year in some way, shape, or form as well. And the final transit, Saturn, a retrograde Saturn, re-entering Capricorn to be here till the end of the year, when both Jupiter and Saturn leave Capricorn and enter Aquarius within days of each other in December. So Venus goes direct on June the 25th. Mars enters Aries on June the 28th. A retrograde Jupiter conjuncts Pluto on June the 29th. A retrograde Mercury conjuncts the Sun on June the 30th, and Saturn enters Capricorn in a few hours. Actually, it might be now, roughly. And so this brings us to the second half of 2020. In some ways, the theme of the second half of 2020 is astonishingly clear, and it is to deal with prior stuff. It may not be what you want to hear, but that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be dealing with prior stuff with greater clarity and greater decisiveness. You're going to be dealing with prior stuff in order to clear stuff out, try to reach some conclusions so that you can move forward. That's why you're doing it. And you're doing it wherever Cancer and Capricorn sits are important. You do have a Capricorn eclipse on in a few days' time, but remember, you're going to continue to host Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto in Capricorn till December. At least Saturn and Jupiter till the end of December, and that can't be ignored. So the sign of Capricorn remains pretty charged, even though the final eclipse is in a few days' time. So dealing with issues that have been brimming, and lessons, and what to release, and where to set up boundaries with yourself and with others, and how to eliminate self-defeating behaviors, and where to create a new beginning, and what to lean into and where to avail of opportunities, things that have been in place since July 2018, even if some of that activity reaches some sort of a culmination or milestone over the summer between June and July of this year, you're still in that energy, and it has a wrapping up. Can we see this through? Can we get this done? But with greater decisiveness. Venus being retrograde and now direct has given us the ability to lose our patience, perhaps, with certain themes that have been brewing since then, have forced us to look at certain relationship and financial priorities and opportunities, and to try, we're in a place, as I said, we're in the place where we just want the coin to go into the slot machine and we want to start playing. And you will be in about 2 weeks' time. The biggest hindrance right now is that with Venus direct and Mars and Aries especially giving us the womb to go and take those arrows and shoot them in the bullseye, whatever our goals, whatever we feel like getting done. You know, the Mercury retrograde till the middle of July, till July the 12th, is the one thing where Mercury's going, hold on. There's still something else to process. There's still something else to investigate, to rethink, to review. We're moving too fast on certain things. This can manifest as confusion, a desire to move forward but not really know, but still be holding on to a certain amount of, yeah, I think I know what I'm done with, or what issues I'm done with, or what aspect of my financial and relationship reality I'm done with, but I still don't feel like I have all the data in order to act. It may be that you have the physical energy and the spiritual energy, but you don't have the mental clarity. There's still a fog of confusion. All right, rest for 2 weeks. Let stuff appear. If it means that you're going to be making some phone calls, if you're going to be doing some investigating, just be prepared that wires are going to be crossed. But even though the wires are crossed, and even though you are sifting, important details will emerge, which, if capitalized on, can get you to change tracks on certain things and actually get them to be put in the right place. There's every likelihood that if you do sign on the dotted line somewhere between now and July the 12th, that something about it may need to get revised after it. But if you do need to, there's nothing you can do about it other than ensure that any details of confusion that are coming up, welcome them, because there might be the opportunity to ensure, as I said, that a square peg is not being put into a round hole. Mercury retrograde does serve a purpose. There's the slowdowns and delays and the longer than expected time to get something done serves a purpose here. So the compass at present is knowing and feeling and enjoying the fact that we have a certain amount of energy, and it may already be helping you to move from a place of Mars and Pisces. When I did the Mars and Pisces video, and it felt for the past 45 days like anything energetic or anything combative or anything argumentative or anything, and I mean conflict that is useful, felt like it was dead in the water, that the fiery ball of Mars was just hitting this ocean of Pisces and fizzling out energetically, emotionally. Now with Mars and Aries, it is all systems go in every respect except for cognition, processing, data, information, communication, important piece. 2 more weeks, and then all the gates are open. We had forward movement in January. We had forward movement in April. We're going to have forward movement again in August, from the middle of July to the end of August, beginning of September. And then we're going to have real forward movement of the kind we had in January of this year, and to some extent in April of this year, in December. We want a lot of forward movement, but remember, forward movement can be extraordinarily quick and somewhat disorienting, and that's why we may get 4 months of forward movement in a year. But the rest of the year, some personal planet is retrograde because our systems then are trying to catch up with it and adjust to all the changes that have occurred. And the April forward movement, which is what this summer is about, this Mercury retrograde is about, was on the one hand about lockdowns, but on the other hand, it was about ushering a completely new reality, not completely new, certainly an accelerated new reality surrounding how work is getting done and what our new realities look like. Think about so much that has changed, and in some cases irrevocably, with companies saying that they can allow people to start working from home on a permanent basis in certain instances, high profile instances. It may not be global, but remote meetings, remote conversations, how much can be done from home? So much it's kind of remarkable. So forward movement is exciting and interesting and sometimes forced upon us, but disorienting. And so here we go. The second half of 2020 requires us, now that we're going to have increasing clarity about what our goals are, what we value, what relationships we want to keep, what relationships we want to sever, I would imagine to some extent right now, giving relationships another chance to really understand what has gone on within them, to determine whether we have the right idea or not with Mercury retrograde right now. What is going to hold weight? As I mentioned last time in my last video with Venus direct, what bridges are we ready and going to try to build, and how many of them will remain standing and how many of them will fall because the foundations are just not there and they're not strong? We're kind of in this space. But the second half of 2020 is about, if you were to say, Abhi, what are we headed to? I would say you are headed to putting the past in the past. You are headed to wrapping things up that are continuing to take up a certain amount of emotional and mental energy, at times forcibly, and at times with the eclipses it will be forced upon you so that you can move forward. I would imagine everyone is done with those aspects, certain aspects of their life that have been in suspension for a while, that are not in a satisfactory place, that are in an unsatisfactory place of suspension. So while on the one hand, some of you may feel like, oh, I was hoping that the second half of 2020 would usher something new, I would say, for God's sakes, welcome the fact that it is an opportunity with Venus just going direct, with you being clear, with Mercury going direct in 2 weeks, to roll up your sleeves. And it does not mean that you are not going to be moving forward. You will be moving forward in August, you will be moving forward in December, and you will have other types of moving forward going on too. And these eclipses and new moons and full moons will start just those things that are weighing you down and are in suspension and a certain amount of confusion and are taking up a certain amount of energy and have been in place since July 2018. Finish those lessons, wrap those up, get those boundaries in place and put them behind you. When Jupiter and Saturn enter Aquarius finally, Saturn was in Aquarius for about 3 months between March and the end of June, and that was certainly a shift in energy socially, with all the activism and push for equality that came into play. It'll be very interesting to see where that heads after December of this year with both Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius. So from a macro perspective, we are not done with the pandemic and we are not done with the social and political unrest. And as I've said, if the President of the United States makes it past the summer with some of the hidden activities and behind the scenes stuff that has been going on, then it remains, then we'll see what this election really looks like. But the turmoil continues, and what I cannot tell right now, and it will become clearer by the time we get to the end of August, is whether the turmoil will continue and increase and become more decisive starting December because the current reality continues, or will the move for greater social equality come into play in a much bigger way after December of this year because we have new energy. Remains to be seen, and quite frankly is in suspension till about August the end of August of this year. So we're going to have to continue to see how that goes. So, second half of 2020, the energy is here and will really be here in 2 weeks' time to put anything that we're carrying with us from the past, especially since the middle of 2018, get those energies wrapped up and put behind us so that we can move forward. And if that sounds disheartening, it's not meant to. It should really feel like, yep, that makes sense. Let's get the old done so we can clear the slate for the new. Currently, for the next 2 weeks, no question that there's a certain amount of confusion, and while energetically and spiritually and in every way we want to move, mentally things are still foggy and details are still emerging and things are still not entirely clear. That, if you embrace it, is so much the better. If you investigate, if you're just a little less decisive for 2 more weeks, so much the better. Outside of that, I'm going to do more detailed videos of Mars in Aries and Saturn in Capricorn. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else I really want to address outside of that, I'm going to do more detailed videos on Mars in Aries and Saturn back in Capricorn next, before I do the full moon in Capricorn video, before the 4th or 5th of July. Okay, so the first half of the year is behind us, and in about 2 weeks' time, it really will be behind us. And the second half of this year is going to see us with greater energy. We are already feeling this energy, and we're going to be able to translate into some sort of action. And I liken the action to cleaning out the clutter. Cleaning out the clutter. Cleaning out the clutter. Too much baggage. Too much baggage. Too much baggage. Okay, that is what it feels like astrologically. So let's clear those slates. And I cannot promise an entirely peaceful time, and I certainly cannot promise a smooth time. As I'd mentioned to you, increase in cases as we headed towards June the 29th, and then Jupiter and Pluto will separate, but Saturn is retrograde and is going to try to come closer to Pluto, which is what started this whole thing in November, December anyway, as far as the pandemic is concerned. But then Jupiter conjuncts Pluto again in November. So an increase in cases perhaps for a reason, to figure out how it is that this can be solved on some level. There's also an interesting correlation. I'm going to say this without trying to sound like a conspiracy theorist. There's also some sort of a correlation, really astrologically speaking, between this pandemic and some of the social stuff and the political stuff that is playing out. And, there are times when I scratch my head and I wonder about this virus. I'm just like, is this a random happenstance, or is this planted for some reason to, I don't know, somehow sway or affect the voting, or I don't know. That's a separate video altogether. But I cannot promise, I can't, on an overall global level, a certain amount of unrest and confusion remains, no question, till the end of this year, no question. And it gets translated into clearer and cleaner and more decisively revolutionary, whether it is peaceful or it's protest-filled. It's certainly decisive movement after December of this year. But on a personal level, the next 6 months or so are all about cleaning up the clutter, setting boundaries, learning, leaning into what we need to lean into, completing what we need to complete, cleaning out the clutter. Because after December of this year, it's a new set of energies. Okay. If you found this video useful, helpful, please feel free to share it with friends, others, however you choose to do that. Feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button so you're notified whenever I do new videos. My contact information is in the description box. You can contact me to find out about rates for readings, and if you want me to make you an easy-to-read version of your chart that'll tell you which signs are in which houses and what those houses stand for, but you will need to know your birth time for that. But don't send me your birth time. Just first inquire about rates to see if you're interested. I don't want to collect your personal information unnecessarily. I will leave it at that. The next video is going to be about Mars and Aries, then a video of Saturn coming back into Capricorn for the second half of this year, and finally a video on the full moon lunar eclipse on July the 4th or July the 5th, where we are at. Good to see you all again.